Hi, I'm Pat, and welcome to my garage. Today, we're going to replace the spark plugs in the BMW i8. BMW recommends that you change the spark plugs every 30,000 miles. My BMW i8 just hit 25,000 miles. I'm changing them a little bit early. The engine in the BMW i8 is a turbocharged B38 1.5 liter 3-cylinder engine. With 11:1 compression ratio and direct injection, those spark plugs are under a lot of load a lot of time. So let's get to cracking on replacing the spark plugs in the BMW i8. First, let's take a look at some of the tools we'll need in order to complete the job. First, I have this external Torx socket. It's an E8. Next, we have spark plugs. In this case, I have 3 laser Iridium NGKs, and I'll link to the description on where to find these. Next, we have a spark plug removal tool. This is special. It's a very thin-walled socket. Typically, you have very thick walls. This is very thin. This also has a magnet inside instead of a piece of rubber, so it doesn't get stuck on the spark plug. This is made by Burger Motorsports. Link in the description below for this spark plug removal tool. Next, to install the spark plugs, we want a piece of rubber hose. Since I didn't have that, I decided to go out to Amazon and I picked these up. So this actually comes in a kit of 2. But Texton Manufacturing makes this spark plug removal / installer tool. Link to the description for this. We're going to use these in order to thread the spark plugs back into the head. We have our standard 3/8 inch drive with a universal end on it. And we also have a 3/8 inch torque wrench. Finally, we have compressed air in order to blow out the areas around the spark plugs before we remove them. The first thing we want to do is make sure we start out with a cold engine. Leave the vehicle sit overnight. That way the aluminum heads and the steel that's inside the spark plugs doesn't bind up. Because with heat you have expansion, and sometimes it'll make it tighter. And then when you go to remove a spark plug, you may end up cross-threading. Not good. So make sure you have a cool engine before you start. The next thing we'll do, we'll go ahead and open up the rear trunk. Next, we can go ahead and remove this cover over top of the engine. We'll just fold this back, turn these 2 cam locks, and lift this out. Next is a piece of foam insulation. This just lifts out of place. Next, we'll go ahead and remove this thin piece of aluminum. This is the service cover for over top of the engine. There are knurled knobs, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that we need to remove. We could just twist these off by hand. Next, we can lift our aluminum cover out. You want to lift up and then pull out. There are 3 tabs on the back that fit in 3 slots in the i8, which hold this in place. Next, we want to cover up the back of the i8 with something to protect the paint. I found this moving blanket relatively cheap online. Now, in order to gain access to the engine, we're going to need to have some type of a step stool or a chair so that we can step up and then in to the trunk compartment. Once here, we see the top of the engine. This is an acoustic cover. There are 4 rubber grommets that hold this in, and we could just pick up on this. And sometimes these rubber grommets may go through, but it's okay, we can just pop them back in. This now exposes the top of our engine. Let's go ahead and take a closer look. The inline 3-cylinder of the BMW i8 has the front of the engine here and the rear of the engine back here. This is where your transmission and transaxle lie. Your air box is also located here. Here's your oil cap, and here are the 3 ignition coils. These are numbered 1, 2, and 3, and the firing order is actually 1, 3, 2. So we're going to go ahead and start with number 1 first. We're not going to disassemble anything here. We're only going to work on 1 cylinder at a time, and according to the service manual, we want to remove the electric connection first before we do anything. The electrical connection has a small gray tab. I'm unable to pull this up with my finger, so I had to go over and grab a flathead screwdriver. And if I just pull up on this gray tab, it now loosens the connector, and I should be able to remove it without any trouble. Next, I'm going to grab my external Torx or E-Torx size 8 socket and loosen up the bolt that goes to the top of the ignition coil. Now that that's loose, I should be able to pull straight up on the ignition coil and pull it directly out of the head. Wow, that's down there pretty deep. So it looks like so this Torx top, all right, so this looks like just like a Torx bit. So this is the top of our bolt. This does not slide out of the ignition coil, so we won't lose these, but I'll still put this in a safe place. Next, we're going to make sure that our safety goggles are on while we take this compressed air and blow out this shaft. Now, it's important that we blow this shaft out with compressed air because when we change this spark plug, we don't want any debris that may be in there to fall inside the engine because that can cause problems and we don't want that. So now that this is clean, we can go ahead and remove the spark plug. Next, we're going to take our special removal tool and make sure that we install it on the end of a universal joint. This is because we don't want any type of motion from this ratchet to crack the top of that spark plug, because then we may have even more trouble getting it out of there. So I'm going to slowly work this down into the cylinder. And I can feel that the magnet actually caught the top of the spark plug. That's pretty cool. Just going to disengage this a little bit so it's in a better position to go ahead and loosen the spark plug. These are actually in here a little bit tighter than I expected. Ah, there we are. So take a closer look at that and see how our spark plugs look. They look a little on the dark, although near the electrode it looks normal. And it's being held in place with a magnet, which is really cool. And we could see that this is a special tool because this is a special type of connection here in order to loosen and tighten this. And the very tip of the spark plug, it's not your typical spark plug that has some sort of an oblong section to it where it can catch. Nope, this just has a normal metal top on it. So pretty cool. Let's go ahead and grab the new spark plug and we'll install that in the i8. So before we install a new one, we're going to make sure that these are the exact same thing, because this is BMW brand and this is NGK. Everything looks correct though. It looks like it's the same depth in the cylinder. Looks like it's the same gap as it should be. And we have the same connections, we have the same top, same bottom. Everything looks good. Now this spark plug, they recommend that you do not stick any type of NECs on it for some reason, probably because of the higher compression ratios. So we're going to install it dry, but we're going to use our spark plug installation tool to do that. So these are our Texton manufacturing little rubber tubes, and I'm just going to place this in the end. That way it's held in place pretty well. Then I can start these by hand. I want to make sure that I do not drop the spark plug and end up bending the electrode at the bottom. So I'm feeding it in slowly until I feel it actually went into the hole, and I'm going to start it by hand. Okay, that's in as far as it'll go. Now I can just pull the removal tool straight off. And no more spark plug here. The spark plug is in there. Now back to our Burger Motorsports spark plug removal tool. It's still on a universal joint, but this time I'm on a torque wrench. And the torque settings for installing the spark plugs are 17 pounds-feet or 23 Newton meters. So I have it set. It's ready to go. Again, I want to be very careful that I install this on top of the spark plug and that there are no movements back and forth or in such a way that I would damage this spark plug. Now the universal joint makes it a little bit difficult to get directly on top of it. There we are. I can feel that the magnet is engaged. I feel that we can turn it without any issues at all. Excellent. So, I'm going to go ahead and torque these. There we go. Excellent. Next, we'll reinstall the ignition coil. So I just want to place this into the cylinder the same way it came out. I'll move some other wiring harnesses out of the way. Excellent. Next, the service manual recommends that we install the wiring harness. So we're going to plug that in until we hear a click, and then press on the gray locking block. Finally, we're going to get our E-Torx bit, and the recommendation is that we tighten this to 6 pounds-feet. I'm going to go ahead and hand tighten it, and then when I'm done with all of these, I'll just go over them with the torque wrench. Excellent. So cylinder number 1 is complete. We can move on to cylinder number 2 and 3 in the same exact order, and then when we're done, we'll go ahead and check the torque on all of these ignition coil bolts. For these other 2 ignition coils, I decided to move the camera to the other side of the engine bay to give another angle to see what it looks like from that angle. Now that all the spark plugs have been replaced and the ignition coils have been placed back on, we're going to go ahead and torque this to 6 pounds-feet. This torque wrench goes to 5, so I'm now on the first indicator here for 6 pounds-feet. I also needed to use an extension or an adapter to go from the 3/8 inch to a 1/4 inch. Excellent. So there we have it. This was really easy. Anybody can do this. Only a few tools, maybe an hour tops in order to do this entire job, taking everything apart, putting it all back together. Not difficult. So I would highly recommend you give this a shot. So one thing that I did notice, these BMW spark plugs are stamped with NGK. So these are the same exact spark plugs that you would get at BMW prices, but I got them for NGK prices. And even better, I'll explain a little bit more. But let me tell you a little bit about why I decided to change these a little early as well. I'm actually getting some cost savings out of this. FCPEuro, if you're in the United States, check out FCPEuro. I'm not making any money on this. This is not a sponsored video. But FCPEuro will take back anything that they sell, including wear items like spark plugs, brake pads, you name it. So you could change your stuff early and then send it back and say, I want my money back. The way it works is, I bought these set of spark plugs, the ones that are now in the car, from FCPEuro. So when I take these out and I replace them with another set, they'll refund me the cost of these plugs. I just have to pay for shipping. So I would go onto their website, order a new set, the new set had come here, change them out, ship the old ones back after filling out whatever required form I need to fill out on their website, and they refund me the money. I could change these plugs every 10,000 miles if I really wanted to. But, I mean, that's a lot of work. So anyway, check out FCPEuro, link in the description below. This is a really good deal, and it's on everything. I'm gonna be doing all my oil changes using oil and filter. You can actually send the old oil back to them. I mean, granted, that could be a little expensive to send it back, but I could send the filter back? Why not? Check them out. Now before I put the i8 back together, I'm going to go ahead and start the car and make sure everything's working properly. I went ahead and opened my garage door a little bit to allow the fumes to escape. Let's hop in the i8 and give it a start. So as an i8 owner, you know that when you press this, put your foot on the brake, you press this button, the car goes on. Now, if I shut the door and I take my foot off the brake and I put my foot on the gas, the engine will start up. So at this point, I'm actually hearing engine noise, which is good. It means it's running. I don't feel any type of hesitation. Everything feels normal. I'm not seeing any indications on the panel. No check engine lights, no warnings. So let's go out and take a look. So obviously the engine was started cold and it was revved higher. It's injecting a lot more gasoline into this engine to keep it running when it's cold. And it just now kicked down to a lower RPM. There's a lot of clickety-clankety going on in there, and that's normal. And our exhaust, everything's looking terrific. So I'm just going to let this run for a little bit and let it warm up, but in the meantime I'm going to go ahead and just put the acoustic cover on it I'm not in any danger of doing that from the top of the engine. There's really no moving parts up here. That's really noisy. Let's see how quiet it gets when we install the acoustic cover. Wow. That's unbelievable how quiet that just got. I'm going to go ahead and install the metal cover as well. That's even quieter. Why don't we just throw everything on here just for a quick test fit? This does a great job of insulating sound, let me tell you. Wow. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead and give the engine a few revs. Yep, everything's working great. We have no problems or indications of any problems on any of the consoles. I'm happy. Now, in order to reinstall everything, of course, we took the acoustic cover and just snapped it right into place. The little rubber grommets just catch the little pegs that are on top of the engine. And now we have our metal engine cover, and these 3 tabs go into 3 slots up towards the front of the car. And if you give it a little push forward, you'll see that the holes, if they don't line up, you can take it back out, which is what happened to me. Move it around a little bit. See if you can get them centered. Yep, all the holes line up just perfectly. So we'll go ahead and install our knurled knobs. So we'll take our 7 knurled knobs and go ahead and screw them into place. There's no particular order to installing these, but I like to alternate and make them as hand tight as I can. There's no need to over tighten these. Next, we'll install our foam sound deadening material. Finally, we'll install our cover that goes over the top of everything. And then turn these 2 cam lock adjustments. We can then remove any type of protection that we put down. Go ahead and cover the trunk compartment. And then we can close our trunk. That was actually pretty easy to do. You watched me as I just gave it an attempt for the first time. I never tried to change the spark plugs in these before. I just followed the steps online, and I'm sharing them with you. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up. It means a lot to me to hear your feedback. So also leave a question or comment in the comment section below. And if you like my content, please subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell for updates. Subscriptions are important to me as I continue to grow the channel. So thank you for watching. I hope you have an easy time replacing the spark plugs in your BMW i8. And as always, have a great day.